Welcome back to This is Thailand. Today's story comes from a man named Murray Kowalchuk, 63 years old from Fort McMurray, Alberta, by way of a little town called Vegreville, and for 38 years he worked the drilling rigs in northern Canada. 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. Derrick hand, then driller. The kind of work that wears a man down slow and pays him just enough that he never gets around to quitting. Murray came to Thailand in the fall of 2023 with one suitcase, $1,700 a month, and $26,000 in the bank. He'd done the arithmetic. He was proud of the arithmetic. He'd worked out, down to the dollar, exactly how a man could live on a pension that wouldn't cover a basement suite in Calgary. What he hadn't worked out was everything else. Now this one's different from a lot of the stories we tell on this channel. There's no bar. There's no walking street. There's no woman taking him for a ride while texting 3 other blokes online. What happened to Murray is quieter than that, and honestly, it's harder to warn people about, because most of what went wrong was done by decent people with good intentions, including him. This one's going to stick with you. It stuck with us. Here's his story in his own words. Okay? So, I don't really know how to do this, so I'll just start at the front and go forward, and if I go off on something, you'll have to be patient with me. Diane used to say I take 11 seconds to answer a yes or no question. She timed it once. She wasn't wrong. I'm from Vegreville originally, little town east of Edmonton, big painted Ukrainian Easter egg by the highway. That's what we're famous for. A giant egg. My grandfather came over from Turnapil and dug potatoes, and my dad drove grain trucks, and I went north at 19 because a guy at the Legion said they were hiring in Fort Mac and paying stupid money. They were. They were paying stupid money. 38 years I did that. Started as a lease hand, worked up to derrick hand, ended up driller. 2 weeks in camp, 2 weeks home. Winter drilling when it's -44 and the steel takes the skin off your fingers if you touch it wrong. I've had frostbite in both hands. That's why they don't close all the way anymore. You'll see me holding a beer sort of funny, like a raccoon. Anyway, I met Diane in 1986 at a wedding social in Lloydminster. She was a dental hygienist. She had this laugh that was too loud for how small she was, and it embarrassed her, and I thought that was about the best thing I'd ever seen. 31 years married. No, 32. 32. She got diagnosed at 54, early onset Parkinson's. And I want to be clear here because I've heard guys tell this part like it's a war story, and it isn't. It's just years. It's just a lot of years of small things getting slightly harder. First it's the handwriting, then it's buttons. Then one day you're cutting up her supper and you both pretend that's normal because what else are you going to do? I came off the rigs in 2014, took my pension early, which is why it's a partial, which is a whole other conversation, and I looked after her at home for 9 years. 9 years. People say, oh, that must have been so hard, and yeah. But that's not the part. The hard part is, one was good at it. That's what nobody tells you. I was really, really good at it. 38 years in the patch teaches you one thing above everything else, which is you don't complain, you don't make a fuss, and you fix what's in front of you. And there was always something in front of me. Bed rails, transfer belt, the van, her pills in the little Sunday to Saturday box, and me awake at 3 refilling it because I'd miscounted. Somewhere around year 3, the boys stopped calling. Kenny, Ron Ferguson, the whole crew. Not their fault. I stopped picking up first. You get tired of saying, yeah, about the same. She died on the 11th of April, 2023 in the morning. I was making toast. And then here's the thing that got me, and I've never said this out loud to anybody, so bear with me. About 2 weeks after the funeral, I got up at 5:30 like always, and I stood in the kitchen, and there was nothing to do. Nothing needed fixing. 60 years old, standing in my own kitchen at 5:30 in the morning with 2 working hands and nothing in front of me. I couldn't throw out her hairbrush. Still can't tell you why. Everything else went to the Salvation Army eventually, but that hairbrush sat on the counter for 8 months. Money. Let's do the money, because that's what this whole story is, really. We'd had a good house. Fort Mac prices went stupid in the boom, and then went the other way in the bust, and then the fire in 16 did what it did to everybody, And by 2023, that house was worth about what we paid for it in 2001. Sold it in the summer. And then you subtract 9 years of home care hours that the province doesn't cover, and the wheelchair van, which was $31,000 used, and the money I redrew on the mortgage in 2019 when I honestly just stopped keeping track. What was left when the dust settled? $26,000. And $1,700 a month, give or take, between CPP and the partial pension. Now, if you've never lived in Alberta, $1,700 a month might sound like something. It isn't. It's a one-bedroom in Edmonton, and then you're deciding about groceries. My daughter Shelley's down in Red Deer. 2 kids, and I could see it forming in her head already. Dad moves into the basement. And I love that girl, but I have never in my life been somebody's extra room. So, Kenny Barcelo. Old mud man off Rig 47, hadn't heard from him in 6 or 7 years, and he starts turning up on my Facebook posting pictures from a place called Udon Thani. Up in the northeast of Thailand, pork skewers on a stick, a plate of som tam, him grinning outside an apartment building saying rent's 6,500 baht. I looked it up, 250 odd bucks Canadian a month. And I did what I've always done, which is I got out a pen and I did the math on the back of a superstore receipt like it was trip time. Rent, food, beer, health stuff. I ran it 3 ways, and even the pessimistic one came out with room to spare. That's what I want you to understand about how I got here. This wasn't a fantasy. I wasn't chasing anything. I was not one of these fellas who watches videos of girls on a beach and books a flight. I'm 63, and my knees are shot, and I was married 32 years to a dental hygienist from Lloydminster. It was arithmetic. That's what I told Shelley on the phone in September, and she went quiet for a bit and then said, "Okay, Dad. Just, okay, Dad." She didn't fight me on it. I've wondered since whether I wanted her to. I did know about the retirement visa. 800,000 baht in a Thai bank, or 65,000 a month coming in, and I had neither, not even close. Figured I'd go over on a tourist stamp and sort it out once I was there. Guys sort it out all the time. That was the first thing I decided to deal with later. It wasn't the last. Flew out of Edmonton on the 19th of October, 2023. 1 suitcase. Steel toes in the bottom of it, God knows why. I never wore them again. Her rings on a chain around my neck. Still is. Bangkok first. Suvarnabhumi at 6 in the morning, and I came down that long escalator into a wall of air that felt like standing too close to a rig heater, except wet. I'd never been anywhere. Mexico once in 1998, and that's it. 38 years, and I'd used maybe 9 of my vacation weeks total. Then the little knock air flight north to Udon Thani and Kenny Barcelo, waiting at arrivals in a Roughnecks t-shirt he'd had since about 2006, 30 pounds heavier and grinning like an idiot. First thing he says to me, "You look like hell, Kowalchuk." Fair enough. He'd already lined up an apartment for me. Little block off of Sowi, behind Nong Prajak. That's the park in the middle of town, big pond, walking path, everybody out at dawn and dusk because those are the only 2 hours you'd want to be. 6,500 baht a month. That's about 255 bucks Canadian. 4th floor, no elevator, 1 window aircon that sounded like a compressor going bad, tile floors and a little balcony where you could see about 900 power lines and 1 gold temple roof. I stood in there the first night with my suitcase still zipped and I thought, well, okay then. I want to tell you about the notebook because this is the part where one was happy and I don't want to skip it just because of how things went. I kept a notebook, little grid paper thing, 3-ring, same kind I used for tour sheets on the rig. You write down your depths, your mud weights, whatever came up on shift. Old habit, and I started writing down what things cost. Bowl of noodles from the lady on the corner, 40 baht. That's $1.55. Big Chang from the 7-Eleven, 62 baht. Mu Ping, that's pork on a stick. They do it over charcoal on a cart, and the smoke goes right up the sawai at 5 in the afternoon. 10 baht a stick, so I'd buy 6 in a bag of sticky rice and eat like a king for less than $3. Electric bill first month, 840 baht. Water, 110. I added up a whole day once. Everything. Food, beer, a haircut, a Songthai ride out to Central and back. 290 baht, $11 and change. I used to spend more than that on lunch in Fort Mac. That's not a joke and it's not an exaggeration. A club sandwich and a coffee at the Boomtown was $26, and you'd say thank you for it. So for about 6-7 weeks there I was. I don't know the word. Delighted. I was delighted. 63 years old, walking around Nong Prajak at 6 in the morning with the monks going by in orange and the loudspeakers doing the national anthem at 8 and a stupid grin on my face because a mango cost 20 baht. And the heat. I have to say this. My hands. I told you they don't close right. Frostbite in 89 and again in 03, plus arthritis on top of it now. And in Alberta from about October to April, my fingers were just dead things I carried around. Aching. Every morning stiff for an hour. 2 weeks in Udon and I could make a fist. Both hands. I sat on that balcony opening and closing my hands like a moron for about 10 minutes. Almost cried about my hands. Then December came and the shine came off a bit. Kenny's crowd. There's a group of them, 7 or 8 guys, and they do the same 2 places every single afternoon. A bar on the corner near the Irish pub, and then a place with a pool table where the beer's a bit cheaper. Same table, same chairs, same time. 2:30 for the first one, and I went. Of course I went. I didn't know anybody. And I'll tell you what they talk about. They talk about their ex-wives back home. They talk about immigration and what the rules used to be. And they talk about Thai women constantly in this way where it's not really conversation. It's more like scripture, like they're reciting it. She'll bleed you dry. They've all got a Thai husband back in the village. Never buy anything you can't put in a suitcase. Never let her know what you've got. There was a fella from Rotherham, 60-something, been there 11 years, and he told me the same story about a woman in Nakhon Phanom 4 separate times. Word for word. Same pause in the same spot. And I'm slow. You've probably noticed. Somebody asked me a question, and I actually think about it. And by the time I've got an answer, the conversation's gone 3 doors down the hall. That works fine on a rig. Nobody on a drill floor minds a man who takes a second. But in a bar with 8 guys talking over each other, you're just the quiet one who doesn't get it. And after a while, they stop looking at you when they talk. So I stopped going. Around the middle of December, I just stopped. Went twice a month instead of every day, then once, then hardly at all. Now, I want to be careful how I say this next bit, because it matters. Those guys were bitter and repetitive, and half of them were on their 3rd hong thong by 4 in the afternoon, and I did not want to become that. That was a sound instinct. I still think it was a sound instinct, but they were also the only people in that town who'd have said anything to me, and I'd walked away from them by Christmas. Anyway, January's when it got hard, and the thing that made it hard is stupid, and I've never heard anybody talk about it. Retirement's not a holiday. A holiday's got an end. Retirement is 14 hours a day, every day, with nothing in front of you that needs doing. 38 years I got up at 4:15. 9 years after that, I got up at whatever time Diane needed turning. And now I'd wake at 5:30 out of pure habit in a tile room in Izan and lie there. And there was nothing. No shift. Nobody to lift. Nothing broken. 14 hours of me. I started making up jobs. Walked to the big C for 1 item at a time. Cleaned the aircon filter twice a week. It did not need it twice a week. Which brings me to the laundry. There's a shop on the SOI that runs behind my building. Concrete floor, 2 washers, a big ironing board with a scorch mark shaped a bit like Saskatchewan, a fan going, and a radio playing Lukthung all day. Weekends she'd have a table out front and sell some tam. That's the green papaya salad, pounded in a clay mortar, and the sound of that pounding is the sound of a Saturday morning in that town. Nuk. That's her nickname. Everybody's got a nickname here. Sunantha's the real one. 41, small, hair up in a clip, reading glasses she'd push up on her head and then hunt for. 30 baht a kilo, done next day, folded better than Diane ever did it, and I don't mean that as a knock on Diane. 2nd week of January, I brought in my one good jacket, canvas Carhartt, 20 years old, because the zipper had let go at the bottom, just to see if she knew somebody. She took it, looked at it for about 4 seconds, and had it apart and back together in 10 minutes with a little pair of pliers she kept in a Milo tin. I went to pay her, and she wouldn't take it. Waved her hand. 10 minutes, she said. No money for 10 minutes, and I started bringing laundry more often than I had laundry. I'll just say that plainly. I was washing 4 shirts a week and taking them in twice. She clocked it eventually. Of course she did. She held up the bag and she says, in English, better English than she let on. You have 4 shirt only? Every day, 4 shirt. Where you keep the other shirt, mister? I laughed, out loud in the street. First time in, I don't know how long. And here's what got me, and I've thought about this a lot since. She asked me things. Where's Canada? Is it cold? Are you alone? Why alone? That's it. That's all it was. Nobody had asked me anything in about 3 years. Everybody either warned me or told me their own story. She asked, and then she waited the 11 seconds. End of January, she was setting up the Som-Tam table on a Saturday, and I was standing there like a post, and she pushed a plastic stool at me with her foot and said, sit, eat. Not a date. Nothing like that. I was just standing there and she had food. 14 months. I want that number in your head before I tell you anything else, because it's the number the whole thing turns on. From that Saturday in January 2024, with the plastic stool to about the middle of March 2025, that woman did not ask me for 1 baht. Not one. Not a loan. Not a hint. Not a sad story about somebody's motorbike. And I counted. I want to be honest about that too. I counted. Not on paper, but in the back of my head. The way you count days since the last safety incident. Because I'd read the forums. Before I ever got on the plane, I read about 400 posts by angry men about exactly how this goes. And they all had a timeline. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, then the sick buffalo. 2 weeks came and went. 2 months, 6. Here's what her life actually looked like, as far as I could tell. And I did look. She had the shop. 30 baht a kilo, wash and fold, plus ironing, plus the Som-Tam table, Saturday and Sunday. She was out front pounding papaya at 5:30 in the morning, and the shop ran till 8 at night. She rented the space for 4,000 a month. She had a Honda Click, secondhand, red, with a doorman sticker on the leg shield that was there when she bought it, and she couldn't get it off. Eldest of 5. That matters here, and I didn't understand how much yet. 2 brothers, 2 younger sisters, mother in a village outside Bandung. 90 minutes north of Udon if the road's good. I still measure everything in driving hours. 38 years of the Highway 63 will do that to a man. And she had a daughter, Ploy, 20, at Udon Thani Rajabat, doing something with hotel management. Tuition was about 18,000 a term, and Nok paid it out of the shop. She showed me the receipt once, not to prove anything, just because it was on the counter and she was complaining about the price like anybody would. So I did what I do. I sat on my balcony with a Leo, and I did the arithmetic. Shop income, maybe 25, 30,000 a month gross in a good month. Rent out, Ploy's school, something home to her mother. It was tight. It was tight the way everybody in that town is tight. But it added up on its own without me in the picture anywhere. Nothing needed me. That was the thing that satisfied me. The books balanced without me in them. We went slow. God, we went slow. I was 63 and she was 41, and neither one of us was in a rush about anything. She'd feed me on the weekend. I'd walk down and sit on the stool, and she'd hand me a plate and then ignore me for 20 minutes while she dealt with customers, which honestly was the nicest part. Being around somebody working. I hadn't had that in years. She had this way of correcting my tie that was just brutal. I'd say something, she'd look at me, and she'd say, "That mean buffalo." Then go back to folding. May of 2024, she took me up to the village, Ban Dung Way, then off the main road onto a red dirt track past the rubber, and the houses up on their concrete posts with the space underneath where everybody actually lives. Hammocks, a table, dogs, the water buffalo somewhere behind. Roosters going all day, not just morning, whoever told you it's morning was lying, and I sat on that floor for 6 hours. You have to understand what a 63-year-old man with two rebuilt knees looks like getting down onto a wooden floor. There was a whole audience for it. The aunties absolutely destroyed me. One of them kept patting my belly and saying something, and everybody would go up, and Knock wouldn't translate. She just said, "Not nice, never mind." They fed me until I physically could not. Larb sometimes so hot it took the roof of my mouth off, sticky rice out of the little baskets, grilled catfish, and a bottle of Hong Tong going round with soda and ice that I probably should have said no to at some point. Her mother, May Somjai, 68 then, diabetic on the government scheme, walked with a stick. And I'll tell you exactly what I noticed about her, because it's the whole reason I stopped being careful. She had no interest in me whatsoever. She never once asked what I did or what I had. She held my hand for a second when I came in, told Knock I was too skinny, which I'm 240 pounds, and then went back to her program. Nobody worked me. That's what I'm saying. There was no moment. Then the pump. They had a water pump out back for the garden, a little Mitsubishi jet pump, been dead about a month, and one of the brothers, Boone, the older one, was poking at it with a screwdriver in the way that tells you a man is guessing. And I asked to look. Blown capacitor. That's it. That's the whole thing. 10 minutes with a multimeter and a run into Bandung for a 400 baht part, and one cleaned the impeller housing while I was in there, because it was full of grit and somebody had put the seal in backwards. It ran. It ran better than it had, apparently, and Boone stood there with his hands on his hips and said something to his brother, and then said it to me in English. Slow, so I'd get it. Better than before, man. Before, guy no good. And I had to go stand round the side of the house for a minute. 63 years old, hiding behind a Thai farmhouse because I got emotional about a water pump. But that was the first time since about 2019 that anybody needed me for anything except money or paperwork, and it turns out that's not a small thing. It turns out that might be the thing. Now, the forums. I ran her against that list. Every marker. Did she work in a bar? No. Did she have a kid by a farang? No. Did she ask for a phone? No. Did she disappear for days? No. She was in the shop. You could go and look at her. Did she push me to get married? Never mentioned it. Did she have a Thai boyfriend on the side? I never saw a whisper of it, and I never have since. And I've had a long time to think about it. She failed every single test. Clean sheet. One thing I noticed and let go of. Nobody ever talked about her before. Not her, not the family. Ploy's father was never mentioned, not once. Not even as a bad guy, and there's usually a bad guy. I asked one time early on, and she said, "Long time finish," and topped up my glass. And I took the absence of a story as the absence of a problem. Wrote it off as her being private, which I'm a Ukrainian kid from Vegreville. My family didn't talk about anything either. My mother's brother was in Sarajevo until he wasn't, and we just never said. So it looked like manners to me. January 2025, I gave up my place, and we took a bigger one, second floor, off Projak Silpacom near the market. 9,000 a month, all in. Rent, power, water, food, her scooter, the lot. We were running about 18,000 a month between us, and I paid maybe half of that. 720 bucks Canadian for two people to live. I was still up on the month, on $1,700. There was 25,000 in the account, and I hadn't touched it since I got there. That was January. That was the last month where any of it was simple. March of 2025. That's when the money starts. And I want to walk you through it slow because the whole thing hinges on how ordinary it looked. May Somjai had a sore on her foot. Left foot, the ball of it, under the big toe. Diabetic ulcer. She'd had it for, nobody could tell me how long. Weeks. She'd been walking on it because that's what you do. And she'd been putting something on it out of a jar. And by the time anybody thought it was worth a phone call, the thing had gone under the skin and into the bone. Osteomyelitis. I'd never heard the word before that spring. I can spell it now. They took her into Udon Thani Hospital, the government one, not Bangkok Hospital, the big one where you take a number and sit under fluorescent lights on a metal bench with 200 other people and a television playing a cooking show at full volume. Everybody's got their plastic bag of x-rays on their lap. I sat there a lot that year. She had the 30-baht scheme, so a lot of it was covered, but a lot of it isn't. The IV antibiotics she needed weren't on the list. The debridement, the specialist consult, the follow-ups, the ambulance runs from the village at 3 in the morning when it spiked, the wound dressings you buy yourself at the pharmacy across the road. And there's a doctor in there who says, in about 4 words of English, that if this doesn't turn around in 10 days, it's the leg, below the knee. Now, Knock did not ask me for money. I need you to hear that, because I've told this story to 2 people back home, and both of them jumped straight to the part where she asked. She didn't. What she did was take her gold off. Thai people keep their savings in gold, a lot of them. Chains from the gold shop sold by weight. 1 baht weight is about 15 grams, and the shop buys it back same day. That's the whole point of it. It's a bank you wear. Knock had 2 chains, and I came into the back of the shop one afternoon, and she had them out on the ironing board with a calculator, and she jumped when she saw me, and she put a towel over them. Put a towel over them, like I'd caught her at something. I stood there, 11 seconds probably. Then I said I'd cover the hospital. She said no. Fought me on it actually, properly in a way I hadn't seen from her. She went hard and fast in Thai first, then caught herself and said, "Not your family, Murray." That's the only time she ever used that word about it. Not your family. I said, well, whose leg is it? 45,000 baht over about 6 weeks, $1,800 Canadian. And here's where I have to say something that the fellas in the comments won't like. I do not think that was a mistake. I've turned it over for a year and I still don't. If my dad's foot was rotting off in a hospital in Vegreville and somebody I live with had 1,800 bucks sitting in an account doing nothing, and they didn't offer, I'd think there was something wrong with them. And I'll tell you the other part, the part that took me longer to get at. I spent 9 years pushing a wheelchair. 9 years of hospital benches and pill boxes and phone calls about coverage. That is the language I speak. That is the only language I got really good at. So when this came up, the wound, the dressings, the driving somebody to an appointment, I wasn't out of my depth at all. I was home. It was the most competent I'd felt since Diane died. Nobody pulled a lever on me. There was no lever. I was already leaning that direction with my whole weight, and I had been for 2 years. That's the part 500 wants somebody to have told me. Not watch out for the sick buffalo. Nobody ever says, the thing that broke you is the thing they'll be able to use, and they won't even have to know they're using it. After that, the village changed how it held me. Before, I was Knox Farang. There's a way they say it, friendly enough, sort of like a pet. After the hospital, I got introduced differently. There'd be a new auntie or a cousin down from Nongbalampu, and Boone would do the introduction, and it was longer, and I picked out the words for help and mother, and everybody would do a proper Y, hands up higher than before. I'd be lying if I said I didn't like it. I liked it very much. 63 years old, and I hadn't been anybody's anything since about 2019. And then the little stuff starts, and this is the part 1 actually wants you to write down. 3,000 baht for the niece's school uniform and fees, because it was Ploy's cousin and the money was short that month. Fuel to the village and back, 280 baht a run, and by June I was doing that run maybe 5-6 times a month. A fridge for the laundry shop because Knock wanted to sell drinks out front, 8,900 at Power Buy. Somebody's phone bill, a tarp, new tires on her click. The temple thing in May where you put an envelope in and everybody sees what everybody puts in, and I put in 1,000 because 1,000 seemed right, and I still don't know if it was. None of it's big. That's the trick of it, and it's not even a trick. It's just arithmetic doing what arithmetic does when nobody's watching. I stopped writing in the notebook in June. That's the mistake. Not the 45,000. Not the fridge. Not one single item on that list. The mistake is that in June of 2025, I stopped writing down what things cost because I'd stopped feeling like a man on a budget and started feeling like a man in a family. And those are 2 different men with 2 different relationships to a grid paper notebook. 38 years, I never once skipped a tour sheet. Not once. You write it down at the end of shift, even if it was a nothing shift. And I let that go in about 6 weeks. 2 things bothered me that summer, and I'll give them to you exactly as small as they were. 1. I asked Knock in the kitchen who the family owed money to. Not accusing. It had come up because Boone had said something about the land and she'd shut it down. And she went very still and rinsed a bowl for a long time and said, "Not your problem." I heard that as her protecting me. And here's the thing that took me a year to get my head around. That's exactly what it was. She was protecting me. She meant it kindly. There's a word here, krengjai. It's about not putting your weight on somebody else, not making them carry your trouble. It's considered a virtue. It's how a decent person behaves. It is also, if you're standing where I was standing, indistinguishable from being kept in the dark. Same silence, same rinsed bowl. 2. A merit making at the Wat in July, monks in the morning, everybody on the floor with the food trays. And one of the aunties said something with a word in it that I knew because it's one of about 40 Thai words I had. Sammy, husband, about me. And there was a laugh, and the laugh came about half a second too fast, and it went round the whole floor, and Knock looked at the mat. I thought, that's just aunties. That's the same as my mother's sisters at a wedding social in Two Hills, asking a 30-year-old man when he's going to settle down. Should have asked what the joke was. Didn't. The leg came right in August. They saved it. She's got a limp and half a foot that doesn't feel anything, but she's got the leg. There was a thing at the house when she came home, and Boone stood up in front of maybe 40 people and thanked me by name in Thai and then in English. And they all clapped, and an uncle put a glass of Hong Thong in my hand at 11 in the morning. I've got a photo of that. I've still got it. Big red-faced Ukrainian standing in a Thai yard with a whiskey he didn't ask for, grinning like an absolute fool. $23,000 left in the account, give or take. I say give or take because I genuinely didn't know the number that month, and I'd known it to the dollar every month of my life until then. The roof. Okay, September 2025, and the rains were coming in October, and everybody knew it. The family house at Bandung is one of those places up on posts, corrugated steel on top, and it had been patched about 9 times with whatever was lying around. Bits of tin, a bicycle tire cut open and nailed flat over one hole, which I have to admit was a decent field repair. Underneath, where everybody actually lives, the water was coming through onto the sleeping platform where May Samjai now was, because she wasn't going up the stairs anymore. Half a foot with no feeling in it, and steep wooden steps don't mix. And the septic, which wasn't a septic, it was a couple of concrete rings sunk in the ground in about 1996 and long past caring, and in the wet the whole side of the yard smelled like exactly what you'd think. Nobody asked me. I want that on the record too. I went up there on a Sunday, I stood in the yard with a coffee, and I looked at the underside of that roof from below with a flashlight, and I said, this is a job, 190,000 baht. Call it 7,400 Canadian. New steel, new purlins, because half of them were rotten, proper flashing, a full concrete pad under the sleeping area, 3 new rings and a soak-away done right, plus a hired backhoe for one day and a bloke from Bandung with a welder. Now here's the part one need you to hear properly, because if I let you think I was tricked into this, I've wasted both our time. I loved it. 3 weeks. Up at 5:30, out in the yard by 6 before the sun got serious, working with Boone and the younger brother and 2 cousins who turned up because that's how it goes. Nobody with a hard hat, everybody in flip-flops, which I could not get used to. 38 years of steel toes and safety meetings, and here's a man walking across purlins in a pair of rubber sandals eating a bag of pork rind. I ran that job. Not officially, but I'd say to Boone, we need the flashing before the ridge cap, and he'd look at me, and then we'd do it in that order. And by the second week, they were just asking me first. Rice fields going yellow-green out past the fence. Radio in the yard playing Morlem all day. Somebody's grandmother bringing out a tray at 10 with sticky rice and grilled chicken and a bag of that chili powder that takes your head off. Dogs asleep under the truck. That specific is Satan smell in the afternoon. Dust and charcoal and something sweet from the rubber. And me, 64 by then, up a ladder, sweating through a shirt, absolutely happy. That was the best 3 weeks I'd had since 2014, since before Diane got sick. I'm not going to pretend otherwise just because of how it ended. And the money, I did think about it. I'm not a fool. 7,400 out of 23,000 is a third of everything I had. I sat on that. But I'd watched a leg get saved for 1,800 bucks, and I'd seen exactly what the alternative was. And here was a house I could touch that was going to be a house for another 20 years. And I've never in my life been able to walk past something broken. 23 down to about 15 and a half. That's where the account sat in October 2025. Then comes the part with no events in it, which is the part nobody makes a video about. October to February, nothing happened. That's what I want to say. Nothing happened and everything moved. I became the person you go to, not dramatically. The younger sister's kid needed a phone for school, and it wasn't a request. It was mentioned in front of me, and I said I'd sort it. 4,200 baht. A cousin's motorbike got impounded, 1,100 plus the fine. Loy Krathong at the pond in Udon, the whole family down, and I paid for the day, which was maybe 2,500 and worth every satang because May Sumjai got out of the house. Somewhere in there, my visa was a mess as well, and I'll be quick about it because it's boring, but it matters. I was never on a retirement visa. Never could be. You need 800,000 baht sitting in a Thai bank for 2 months. That's about 31 grand Canadian, or 65,000 a month coming in. And I had $1,700 a month, which is about 48,000 baht. Short, always short. So it was tourist visas and extensions and a run up to the Friendship Bridge at Nong Khai every couple of months to cross into Laos and come back. 45 minutes up the 2 highway. I did that run 11 or 12 times. I got to know that town a bit. Remember that. And Shelley. We used to talk every second Sunday, 45 minutes, hour. By November, it was 20 minutes. By January, it was 15, and I was doing most of the talking, which anybody who knows me will tell you is not normal. Because I'd started leaving things out. She'd say, "How's the money holding up, Dad?" And I'd say, "Fine, good, cheaper than home." Which was true, it was just also not the answer to the question she asked. That's the first dishonest thing I did in this whole story. Not to knock, not to the family, to my own daughter, on the phone on a Sunday, about a bank balance. I've thought about that more than I've thought about the money. February 2026. It came up at the house, not as an ask. Boone and Knock talking in the yard, and I caught the word for land, and then Knock came in and sat down and told me straight, which she almost never did. The rice fields, about 9 rai, the family's land, been theirs since her grandfather, were pledged against a debt. Not a bank, a man in the district, a lender, the way it works out there. And there was a date coming where he could take it properly, file on it, and the family would be off the land. 265,000 baht to clear it. Roughly 10,300 Canadian. I sat with that for 4 days. 4 days. You have to understand, for me that's a geological era. I'd bought a truck in 2011 in about 90 minutes. I asked to see the paperwork. She said she'd get it from her mother. 2 days went by. I asked again, and she said the paper was with the lender, which, fine, that can be true. The borrower doesn't always hold it. I asked his name, and she said, in English, "Why you want name?" Not angry, just closed, like a door you didn't know was a door until it shuts. I told myself, it's not my land. Foreigners can't own land in Thailand, everybody knows that. It wouldn't have my name on it, whatever happened. So what am I checking? What would I even do with the paper? I can't read a Taisha note. It's her family's land, her family's business, and I'm the man who shows up. That's what I told myself. It sounded reasonable at the time. It sounds like an excuse now, and I'm not going to dress it up. I paid it on the 19th of February 2026 in cash at the bank, and Boone drove it out to the man. 15,500 down to about 5,000. $5,000 and 1,700 a month coming in, and no cushion at all. At 64 years old, 11,000 kilometers from anybody who's obliged to care. And here's the thing that started it. Nothing got better. I don't know what I expected. Relief. Somebody standing in the yard going, "Well, thank God that's done." That's what happens when you pay a debt off. That's what it was like in 1998 when Diane and I cleared the truck loan and we went out for Chinese. Instead, the house got quieter. Boone stopped coming round. May Samjai, who used to hold my hand for a second, stopped looking at me straight on. And Knock started taking her phone out to the balcony. Second week of March, I came out of the shower, and she was out there with her back to me, and I heard her say a number. Just the number. In the middle of Thai, I couldn't follow. Nung Lan Song. 1.2 million. I stood in the doorway with a towel and I did the arithmetic, because that's what I do. 1.2 million baht. 47,000 Canadian? I just paid 265,000. And I didn't ask her about it. That night, or the next night, or for a month. I want you to sit with how stupid that is, because I've had to. Songkran, April 13th, 2026. If you've never been in Isan for it, the whole country stops for 3 days and throws water at each other. Kids with those big pump guns from the market, pickup trucks going round with a blue plastic drum in the back, and 6 people bailing out of it with buckets. Everybody's soaked from about 9 in the morning. Talcum powder mixed with water smeared on your face, which is a blessing thing. And everybody does it to the old farang because it's funny. And it's not just a party. The proper part of it is at the house. You pour scented water over your elder's hands, a little bowl, jasmine in it, and you ask forgiveness for the year. Rat Nam Dam Hua, it's called. May Somjai sat in a chair in the shade with her bad foot up and everybody came through in a line. And I did it too, and she put her hand on my head after. That was about 11 in the morning. By 4 o'clock, the yard had gone bad. There'd been Hong Thong going round since noon and a crate of Leo and ice. Boone and one of the cousins started talking loud out by the truck, and then the younger sister got into it, and then it was the whole yard. In Thai, fast, the Isan dialect that isn't even the Thai I'd been slowly learning off the app. I got maybe a fifth of it. Din, land, ngoan, money. Somebody said Pichai, older brother. And then 3 or 4 times farang, which is me. There was only one in the yard. I stood there with a beer going warm in my hand like a piece of furniture. I asked Knock twice what was going on, and both times she said not now, and the second time she said it without turning around. And then out, 19 years old, one of the cousin's boys, nephew near enough, they don't split those hairs. He'd been at Rajabat with Ploy, and he had the best English of anybody there, and he'd been drinking since about 1 in the afternoon. He wasn't angry at me. I want to be fair to that kid, because he's the only person in this entire story who told me the truth, and he paid for it with his family. He was furious at them. He'd been listening to this for years, and it came out sideways, and I happened to be standing there. He turned round and he said it in English, loud, so everybody would understand that he'd said it. He said, "You know they still owe him? You know your money not finish anything?" And then the second thing, right after, without a pause, because he was on a run and couldn't stop himself, and she still got husband. Nobody tell you that. Nobody said a word. That's the bit I'd take back if I could take one bit. Not the money. The 8 or 9 seconds of 40 people in a yard in Bandung, radio still going, water still dripping off the eaves, and not one of them saying no. That's not true. His mother pulled him back by the arm. Boone put his head down. And May Somjai, 69 years old in that chair, with the foot I paid for, started to cry. That's the picture I've got. That's the one that turns up at 4 in the morning. I walked out of the yard and down the dirt track to the main road, and I sat at the bus stop shelter for about 40 minutes with the powder still on my face, and I got the 610 into udon on my own. Now, I want to explain what I did over the next few days, because it wasn't detective work. I didn't hire anybody. I didn't go through her phone. I want to be clear about that because I know what people think happens. Everything I needed was already in the apartment. It had been there the whole time. I just never looked because I never had a reason to, and because looking would have been the sort of thing I'd have had to explain afterwards. There was a Tesco bag in the bottom of the wardrobe. Pawn slips, gold shop tickets, dozens of them going back years. Pawn, redeem, pawn again. Same 3 chains going in and out like a tide. Some of them from before I ever landed in this country. There was a rubber-banded stack of receipts from the lender, handwritten. Thai numerals, which I could actually read by then because numbers were the first thing I learned, being me. Dates going back to 2015. Interest listed monthly. And there was her bank book. She 500 never hidden it. It lived in the drawer with the scissors. I sat at that table and I did the arithmetic properly for the first time in about a year and a half. And it came out around 1.2 million baht still standing against that land. 47,000 Canadian, on top of everything already paid. My 265,000 hadn't cleared anything. It had bought a pause. It knocked the thing back far enough that the man in the district would wait a while longer, and that was worth having to them, and I don't even doubt it was worth having. But it wasn't what I thought I was buying. I thought I was buying the end of something. She never lied to me. I've gone over it and gone over it. Ask me for a sentence where she said a false thing, and I can't give you one. What she did was not tell me. 26 months of not telling me. There's a thing here called kreng jai. It's the closest I can get is you don't put your weight on other people. You don't hand somebody your trouble, especially not somebody who's been good to you, especially not somebody older. It's considered decency. It's how you're raised. And I've had a year to sit with whether that's a virtue or a con, and honestly, I'm not going to decide. I don't think I get to. Two things can be running at once, and they were. She was being a decent Thai woman by her own lights, and I was being kept in the dark. Same silence. Both true. That's not a trick answer. That's just the answer. I waited 4 days before I said anything. I don't know why. That's who I am, I suppose. Thursday night, apartment, aircon going. That little unit that rattled. She came in from the shop about 7:30. I put the pawn slips on the table. And here's what didn't happen. She didn't deny it. She didn't cry and grab my hands and tell me a story. She didn't get angry and turn it round on me for going through her wardrobe, which she'd have been entitled to. She sat down and she looked at the slips for a while and she said, "In English, I think have time. I think I fix, then tell you." That was it. She thought she could get out from under it before I ever found out. That was the whole plan. And then she cried, and I believed the crying, and I still do. I asked her one thing. I asked it badly, and it came out uglier than I meant it, and I'd been holding it 4 days. I said, if I'd had nothing, if I'd turned up with a pension and no savings at all, would you have stayed with me? And she didn't answer fast, which, I've thought about that. A liar answers fast. She sat there. Then she said, I don't know how to think that, which isn't a yes and isn't a no. It's the truth, is what it is. There isn't a version of me that shows up in Udon Thani with nothing. That man doesn't exist. She couldn't answer the question because the question was nonsense, and both of us knew it, and both of us hated that I'd had to put it on the table. I stayed 9 more days, slept on the same bed. We were polite. That's the worst part of the whole thing, if you want to know. Nobody screamed. We were polite. Sunday, the 3rd of May, I packed the same suitcase I came with. She held the lid down while I did up the zip, because it's a bad zip and it needs 2 people. Right. The accounting. I'll do it the way I used to read out a tour sheet at the end of shift, because that's the only way I can say these numbers without my voice doing something. Hospital in the leg, 45,000 baht, $1,800. The roof, the pad, the septic, 190,000, 7,400. The land, 265,000, 10,600. And then the everything else, the phones and the school fees and the fridge and the fuel and the tires and the envelopes at the temple, which I never wrote down after June of 2025 and had to reconstruct off the bank app sitting in a room in Nong Khai, and which came to about 20,000 baht more than I thought it would, around 800, $20,600 Canadian, out of 26. There's about 5,400 left. That's it. That's the whole float. Now, people ask me 2 questions, and I'll answer them both right now so nobody has to type it in the comments. Did you go to the police? No, because there's no crime. Nobody took anything out of my hand. I walked it into a bank, and I filled out the slip myself, and I know I did, because I remember the pen was on a string, and it didn't work, and the girl gave me another one. Did you go to a lawyer? No, because there's nothing to sue about. There was never a contract, never a note, never a scrap of paper with my name on it. And the land was never mine and could never have been mine. A foreigner cannot own land in Thailand. That's not a loophole somebody used on me. That's just the law. Printed, on the internet, in English, And I'd read it before I ever got on the plane. So no, there's no villain to point at. That's the thing about this story that I know makes it a worse video. What I actually lost, if you want the honest list, isn't the money. 3 years. I was 60 and I'm 64. And that was the last of what Diane's house made. 32 years we paid on that house. That was the last of her in a way. The last thing that had come from the two of us doing something together. I put a roof on a house in Bandung with it, which, I don't know. Some days that sits all right with me. Some days it doesn't. And the third one, which took me the longest to name. For about a year and a half, I was somebody who was useful to somebody. That's what I actually bought. I've done the arithmetic, and it comes out at roughly $1,000 a month for the feeling of being needed. And if you'd offered me that deal in writing in a bar in Fort McMurray in 2023, I'd probably have signed it. So, Nong Khai, I came up here because I knew it from the visa runs. 45 minutes north of Udon, right on the Mekong, you can see Laos from the promenade. The hills over there go blue at about 6 in the evening. There's a studio here for 5,500 baht, about $215, second floor, and if you stand at the end of the balcony and lean, you can see the river. So I lean. Rock bottom, for me, was not dramatic. There's no 7-Eleven at 3 in the morning in this story. It was a Tuesday, and I was doing my own laundry in a bucket because I'll be honest with you, I could not walk into a laundry shop for a while. Couldn't do it. And I was wringing out a shirt and I thought, if I fall down those stairs, that's it. That's the end of the story. One ambulance, 1 week in Nong Khai Hospital, and I'm on a plane with Shelley paying for the ticket. $5,400 is not an emergency fund. $5,400 is one bad afternoon, and that's the thing about $1,700 a month, which I'd like the fellow watching this with a calculator open to hear. It works. It absolutely works. I live fine here. I eat well. I've got a fan and an air con and a Chang on a Friday. But it works only as long as nothing happens. And something always happens. And if it doesn't happen to you, it'll happen to somebody standing next to you that you can't walk away from. I told Shelley in June, the whole thing, start to finish, on a video call, 40 minutes, and me looking at the floor for most of it. She didn't say I told you so. She never said it once, and she'd have been entitled. What she said was, do you want to come home? And there was money in the way she said it. She and Dean don't have it either, and she was offering it anyway. I said no. And then I sat in that room afterwards, and I'll tell you, being forgiven by your own kid at 64 is a rougher hour than getting told off would have been. We're back to every second Sunday now. Full hour. And I tell her the actual number when she asks. Knock messages. Not often. Once every 10 days or so, online. A photo of the shop, a sticker, once a picture of May Samjai sitting outside with the leg propped up on a stool. I answer. Every time. I haven't sent money and she hasn't asked, and it's been 3 months, and I don't think she's going to. I think she'd be ashamed to. Did she love me? I get asked that, and people want a yes or a no, and I've got neither. Here's the closest I can get. I think she probably did, and I also think she needed me to be exactly the man I was. The one who can't walk past a broken roof, the one who sat on hospital benches for 9 years and knows the smell. She didn't build that man. She found him, and she used him, in the sense that you use a thing that's right there and is happy to be used. And I don't know that there's a word for that in English that isn't uglier than what actually happened. Those two things sit in the same sentence, and neither one cancels the other out. 400 forum posts by angry men, and not one of them ever got that far. So, what I'd tell you, retiring on $1,700 a month isn't a plan. It's a plan with no contingency. And out here in Izan, the contingency isn't a broken furnace. It's somebody else's whole family, and they were there before you got there, and their arithmetic doesn't stop just because you turned up. Generosity's not the mistake. I'd do the leg again. I'd do the leg tomorrow. The mistake is generosity with no ceiling on it. So put a ceiling. Write it down on paper before anybody's mother is sick. This much and no more. And this is the number I will not go under, ever. Not for the roof, not for the land, not for anybody. And keep the notebook. God, keep the notebook. The month I stopped writing it down is the month the whole thing got away from me, and it was 6 months before I noticed. That's it. That's what I've got. Murray Kowalchuk is 64 years old. He lives in a studio apartment in Nong Khai, 45 minutes from where all of this happened. He walks the promenade every morning before it gets hot. He does 40 minutes of Thai off an app. And he cooks for himself now. Badly, he says, but he's learning. He wanted us to say two things. The first is that nobody in this story committed a crime. Not one person. That's what makes it hard to warn people about, and it's why we ran it. Most of what goes wrong out here doesn't arrive with a villain attached. It arrives as a sick mother, and a leaking roof, and a family that has been carrying something for 11 years before you ever landed at the airport. The obligation Knock was under is real. It's not a con. It's how an eldest daughter lives in that part of the country, and she'd have been carrying it whether Murray showed up or not. The second is the number. He was very insistent about the number. Know your floor before you land. The figure you will not go beneath no matter who asks and no matter how much you love them. Write it down while you're still on the plane, while it's still just arithmetic and nobody has a face yet. If you've been where Murray's been, or you're thinking about going, tell us below. Somebody in that comment section is about to make the same decision he made, and they're reading. Thanks for watching. This is Thailand.